Hi, and welcome to Your Selling Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Kirk, aka Your Selling Guide. I'm a small town girl who took a big risk and quit a steady corporate desk job to travel the U.S. in an RV. Along the way, I started selling on Amazon, grew a 7-figure business, visited all the lower 48 states, bought a farm, and today I am still doing what I love to do, selling on Amazon while helping other sellers do it too. Each week, I will share Amazon tips and tricks and bring in guests to share their stories, expertise, and tips on the platforms that they use. Think of this as a sit down with your Amazon bestie where you can learn, ask, start, and grow your online selling business. Welcome to Your Selling Pod.
Hey crew, and welcome back. On today's episode, I'm going to be breaking down travel sourcing. What happens when you are sourcing in a location that is not your home, both on Amazon and as a business expense? This year, in addition to launching this podcast, I'm also super excited to be hosting meetups all across the U.S. Our next meetup is coming up in May, and if you missed the first one in Florida, it was such a blast. I learned so much from talking to other sellers, so you're not going to want to miss this one. To get all the information, head to yoursellingguide.com/meetup for the details, or you can follow me on Instagram at yoursellingguide. All right, let's talk travel sourcing. If you're not familiar with me and how I got started selling on Amazon, I actually traveled around in a fifth wheel RV, which if you're not sure about what a fifth wheel is, it's the kind of RV that hitches up in the bed of the truck, which I did not know before buying one of these fifth wheel RVs. So that's what it's called. But anyways, I have been to all of the lower 48 states in this RV. I currently still live in the RV. I'm recording this podcast in the RV, but I actually haven't traveled with the RV for about a year now. But when I started selling on Amazon, I was traveling in the RV all over the U.S., and it's actually the reason why I started selling on Amazon. I needed something that I could do from anywhere. I think it's actually really great to source from an RV, and so if you're looking to shake things up and head out for just a season or a year or whatever, you can even take your family, I think selling on Amazon from an RV is pretty awesome. So I say all that because just letting you know that selling from different locations on Amazon while RVing is kind of all I've known in my Amazon journey. So I know how to change the addresses in Amazon, but that doesn't mean that you're changing like your legal address. You're just changing where you're sending your shipments for. I've actually been asked quite often what you do when you are sending a shipment, not where your home address is, because, of course, people know that I've been doing it in an RV. So today I'm going to break that part all down, but the more important thing I want to talk about in this episode is travel sourcing and business expenses. Now that I'm stationary, I actually fly to travel source in other areas. And there's no reason that you can't also. So first up, we are going to cover the Amazon Seller Central part of it, both for FBA and FBM. So for FBA, you actually are only changing your address of the location for that shipment or however many shipments you're doing from whatever address you happen to be at. I have always picked the UPS store for my address because I just figured that if a shipment would end up back at the UPS store, they would figure out a way to contact me or send it back, to Amazon where it was supposed to go. That's why I've always used the UPS store. Now, technically, I could have used the campground that I was at or another address like that, but the campground wasn't going to know who I was if that thing showed back up at them, right? So I've always used the UPS store. So that would be what I recommend and what I normally recommend to people. If you're going to be out travel sourcing in an area that is not your home, like address where you're normally at, just go ahead and pick the closest UPS store as your ship from address. The reason you want to do this is because then Amazon's going to pick a warehouse for your items that's closer to wherever you're shipping it from, right? So I'm in Oklahoma. Most of my stuff goes to Dallas. Every once in a while, some of it's going to Memphis now. But because of that, it knows where I'm at. If I was saying I was in Oregon, for example, it's going to be a lot more expensive and might have some errors on the UPS side if I still was using Oklahoma and now it's going from Oregon to Dallas, and that is not going to be the same price to ship. So always use a close address to where you're at. The UPS store where you're going to drop it is perfectly fine. I've never had any issues. However, I have heard of people's shipments showing back up at their house. So you do want to pick an address that is, somewhat secured. There is no reason that you need to change anything in your account as far as like your legal address or anything like that. Just when you're creating your shipment. Now, I do mine in Inventory Lab now, but you can also do it in Seller Central if that's where you're creating your shipments. Every time you make a shipment, it's going to ask you where the address is, so you can just add a new one. I have had so many addresses over the years in my Seller Central account that I sometimes will be like, oh yeah, I need to go through and delete. And I'll just go through chunk delete like 10 addresses of different places I've been. But that's what you do. So don't change anything in your like legal business address unless you're legally changing where your location of your whole Amazon store is. So that's FBA. It's super easy. Nothing, no big deal. FBM is a little bit of a trickier one. However, Amazon has made some changes that are actually really good for this, which is not normal. If you know anything about Amazon, their changes are usually like not great. But this change actually first started out not great, ended up being great. So here it is, FBM and travel sourcing. Prior to 4 months ago or something when I realized they did this, I never really did a lot of FBM while I was traveling because first of all, I live in an RV, so I don't really have a space to hold the stock. Again, FBM is where I am sending the stuff to the customer directly. I'm not sending it to Amazon's warehouse. I'm sending it straight when it's ordered from me to the customer. So because I live in an RV, I don't have a total lot of space to be holding stock for FBM shipments. So that was one thing. But the other thing was the returns. In the past, when you would send an FBM order, if there happened to be a return, it would just automatically go back to whatever address you shipped it from. Now, that is not going to work for me, right, as a campground or UPS store because I don't have a UPS account. So there's that at the various stores around the country. And so they're not going to know who I am if it should get returned. I do have like a post office box per se. It's like, a box at like a mailbox place. I do have one of those, so I could get returns back there, but what happens is the return would arrive there, and it would be, months or weeks before I would ever get my mail, so it did make, actually investigating the return from the customer to make sure it was, sellable and all that stuff a little more difficult. So, because of returns, and as well as, no space in the RV, was one of the reasons I never really did it. However, they've since changed that, and you can have different addresses for your return address. Still, while travel sourcing, this does make it a little bit difficult because, again, you need to be able to get those returns, right? But you could change the address to be sending from your home address, and so any returns will go back to your home no matter where you send them from. Now, if you want to save this part of the podcast to come back to later, I'm going to tell you how you can add the different multiple return addresses in your account. So, under settings, you would go to return settings. Then you're going to go to manage return addresses. And then off to the side, you're going to see a little box that says with the hyperlink blue, manage your return addresses. When you click that, you can actually add new addresses or you can edit old addresses that are in there. And then once you're in that main area where you saw that hyperlink, again, in your manage addresses, you also have this box here where you can see the address that it's defaulting to. So you've got a US box, a Canada box, and a Mexico box. I think everyone's accounts have that now, even though if you don't sell there. And you can edit and update that address whenever you need or want to. Now, as far as wherever your address is when you actually send it, so I have always had my post office box number as my return address, even though I was never actually in that state. And it really never affected anything. So yes, I might have had to pay a couple dollars or, probably not dollars, a dollar or change more because it thought it was sending from one state when I was really sending to another state. But it was never an issue. I never had any orders not make it there. There was never any problem. So you can have your home address as your ship from address and your return address, even though you're in another state or area when you actually send it. So this is just something to note, again, I've never had any issues and I'm always talking from my own experience. It may cost a little bit more and you can add a different address as your ship from address and a totally different address as your return address. But I like things a little simpler, so I just always had the one. It worked out fine. I never had any issues on the very few items that I did FBM. I typically do a lot of FBM, or I used to, a lot of FBM during Q4 more than any other time, because you want to get those items out during the holiday rush when they are not going to make it in time for FBA. But that's another podcast. Again, for all of these things, you are not changing anything as far as your legal address and such in Amazon. It's just your return addresses. Okay, now on to the actual logistics and expenses of travel sourcing. I can fit all of my supplies in a large checkable suitcase, and that is what I do. I pack up my roller printer, my Scotty peeler, my poly bags, labels, Goo Gone, laptop, UPC scanner, any and all supplies that I'm going to need for an FBA shipment. Now, I don't take all of my poly bags, but I take enough to cover what I think I will be able to source in a week or however long I'm going to be there. Now, in the show notes, I link all of my supplies I use for Amazon anyways, but I actually use these banker bags. They're like those canvas bags that have a zipper. And, I think people use them to take money to the bank or whatever, or they did back in the day. I don't know. Anyways, that's what I use for my poly bag. So I have like 5 different colors. And so I know each color is a different size. It makes it it makes it easy to store them because I have a little cupboard here in the RV where I store them all. But it also makes it really easy to just grab them and throw them in the suitcase. They're all organized in those bags, easy to go. I buy the shipping boxes for my FBA travel sourcing while I'm traveling at the destination. So I go to Walmart or Lowe's and I pick them up every week. And that's something I've actually always done. So I've always gone and got whatever boxes I need every week for FBA shipments. I still do that because, again, I'm in an RV and I don't have a lot of space to hold all these extra boxes. So I just buy what I need every week. Now, this is the important part. I am not a tax professional, but I am going to read to you from the IRS website on business travel expenses. All of these links I'm reading for are, again, going to be in the show notes. Okay, from the IRS website. Travel expenses are the ordinary and necessary expenses of traveling away from your home for business, profession, or job. You cannot deduct expenses that are lavish or extravagant or are for personal purposes. You're considered traveling away from home if your duties require you to be away from the general area of your tax home for a period substantially longer than an ordinary day's work, and you need to get sleep or rest to meet the demands of your work while away. Generally, your tax home is the entire city or general area where you maintain your place of business or work is located. This is regardless of where you maintain your family home. So this is an example they give on the website. You live with your family in Chicago, but you work in Milwaukee, where you stay in a hotel and eat in restaurants. You return to Chicago every weekend. You may not deduct any of your travel, meals, or lodging in Milwaukee because that's your tax home. Your travel on the weekends to your family home in Chicago isn't for your work. Those are personal, so those expenses are also not deductible. If you regularly work in more than one place, your tax home is the general area where your main place of business or work is. So your tax home is different than your family home. So for you out there, stationary like I am right now, so my tax home and my family home is the same location. But if I was traveling around in an RV full time and I never did take any of these travel expenses, that would be a lot different story because it's personal, right? What I'm doing, I'm traveling around personally. But now that I'm stationary and I'm traveling for the sole purpose of sourcing in other locations, sourcing specific stores I like to source, that makes it completely different, and that is total business travel. So something you want to just understand going into it, that I have actually had to travel 2 hours to source a place. So I ended up sourcing there, getting a hotel for the night, and then doing more sourcing and coming back the next day because I needed sleep, right? My work required me to rest and sleep. I couldn't keep going, and I couldn't do it all in one day. Again, from the IRS website, travel expenses for conventions are deductible if you can show that your attendance benefited your trade or business. So that meetup I was mentioning earlier, that is a business expense. And if you want to come to it, you can, travel, and you will learn a lot and grow your business by meeting other sellers. So save those receipts, use your business credit card or debit card, whatever you got to do. But again, if you have any trainings that you do or any conferences, the meetup is considered a conference that you go to, you can deduct those on your business expenses as travel expenses. Here's a brief list of what the IRS says are deductible travel expenses while away from home. Included but aren't limited to the cost of travel by airplane, train, bus, or car between your home and your business destination. If you're provided with a ticket or you're riding free with frequent flyer milers, that is no cost to you, so you cannot deduct it. If you take a taxi or Uber or anything like that, again, between the airport, your hotel, train stations, whatever, tax deductible. If you have to ship any baggage, so if you check your bag at the airport, or if you have to ship stuff back because for whatever reason you couldn't sell it, again, tax deductible. Using your car while at your business destination, you can deduct the actual expense or the standard mileage rate, as well as business-related tolls and parking. If you rent a car, you can deduct only the business use portion for the expenses. So if you're travel sourcing and the car is for that sourcing, you can use it. Lodging and non-entertainment related meals, dry cleaning and laundry, depending how long you're gone. Your lodging and non-entertainment related meals if your business trip is overnight or long enough that you need to stop and sleep to rest properly to perform your duties. Meals include amounts spent for the food, beverages, taxes, and related tips. Again, tips for any services that you have to, provide. If you tip the bellboy, you can deduct the cost of meals if it is necessary for you to stop for substantial sleep or rest to properly perform your duties while traveling from home or business. Some of this stuff is repetitive. So again, if you have to pay to check your supplies at the airport, that's a business expense. If you rent a car or you stay in a hotel while you're travel sourcing, a business expense. Here's another part of the IRS website that was interesting as an example. Say you drive to Chicago on business and you take your spouse with you. Your spouse isn't your employee. Your spouse occasionally types notes for you, performs similar duties, and will accompany you to luncheons and dinners. The performance of these services doesn't establish that your spouse's presence on these trips is necessary to conduct your business. So your spouse's expenses are not deductible. Say you pay $199 for a double room. Let's call it a family room, because what's a double room with your spouse? A single room would cost $149 a day. You can deduct the total cost of driving your car to and from Chicago, but only $149 for the day for your hotel room. If you and your spouse take public transportation, you can only deduct your fare. Now, again, not a tax professional. I am not a tax professional. That sounded a little Yoda-like. Anyways, I'm not a tax professional. So I don't know why you and your spouse would want a double room, but let's just say you took your family and it was a family room. You can only deduct, if that room costs more, then you can only deduct what the lower, single room, because you didn't need your family with you, travel sourcing, they're not your employees, all that kind of stuff. So you can deduct only portions of it. So that's something to know. Again, not a tax professional, but I know there are a lot of awesome places out there for you to source, and they might not be where you actually live. So if you do choose to travel source, just wanted you to know that you can. I always recommend chatting with a tax professional about your personal situation. If you're not sure where to look for a tax professional, I recommend asking a friend or family member who has a business, who has someone who does their taxes for them, and ask them who they use. It's often beneficial to have someone local or someone that you can personally just call if you ever have any questions. Now, while an Amazon business might seem like new or foreign to you and seem totally different because maybe you're a first-time business owner, there's actually nothing special. You don't need a special CPA or tax person who knows Amazon. You can use any tax professional because a tax person will know how to do business taxes, and you don't have any kind of special business. You are literally just a retailer running an online business. There's nothing different or foreign, even though it does seem like it to us because we're new. Actually, there's some Amazon specific accountants out there, and they might be charging you more just because they can, because they're looking for people who want to pick an Amazon account. So just know that it doesn't have to be a special tax professional. Just any tax professional will likely do. So I hope that helps you and gets you excited to go out and travel source. I literally have so much fun while I'm travel sourcing. It's great to get out of your, normal humdrum area. Maybe you're in a rut, maybe it's dried up, and you want to get out and travel, Why not do it as a business and make some money sourcing while you're there? The 2 IRS pages I read from and referred to will be linked again in the show notes. They do make it kind of easy. I mean, there's a little bit of confusing part, but they do make it kind of easy to just understand for a layperson. So definitely check that out for more. And again, talk to your tax professional. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will be back next week with another episode. You can follow and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast player and follow me and watch it on YouTube at Your Selling Podcast. If you're a member of the YSG community or you want to be a guest on this podcast, please go ahead and email me at podcast@yoursellingguide.com. Again, thank you so much. Please leave me a review if you enjoyed this podcast because it helps me reach another audience and I so appreciate it. Until next time, happy sourcing.